I'm Marcus.
I'm Jared, and this is Level With Us, the show where we have a cozy video game discussion. And this week we've got a little mini-sode where we talk about Marcus's adventures at GDC. Marcus, what was
Wow.
your GDC experience? You professional game developer, you attend conventions.
Well, I'm sure not a professional.
Hobnob.
The phrase I like to use is hobnob with bigwigs, but
Hobnob with bigwigs.
You can call it what you want. And also, travel diaries are not usually super interesting for podcasts, but when you go to a video game convention, you have a video game podcast. Really, people are just asking for it. So, I went to San Francisco to go to GDC. It was kind of on a whim. The month before, decided to go with 3 of my friends. They were all there primarily to network, and I kind of was there for the same reason. But the difference is I came home with 3 bags of swag, whereas I don't think any of them came home with swag. So I think clearly I was there as a fan just as much as I was there to meet people.
And speaking of people, like, who were some of the coolest people you met?
Oh, yeah. So GDC is fascinating because it's kind of, I guess I've already said this, it's kind of a networking event. So you have a mix of industry professionals and businesses looking to make connections with other businesses or technology. There are a lot of students there. There are a lot of freelancers who are, looking for opportunities, or people who come to showcase their games. And a lot of these people and the opportunities to talk to them are not actually in the conference themselves. They're hanging out in the park immediately next to the convention center, or they go to these meet and greets and happy hours and bar sessions. I don't know what you call those. They meet over drinks. But yeah, so people I met Arlo, the YouTuber.
There's a fantastic photo of it, which can I post it on Twitter?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Oh, but just talking about interesting people, we went to the beach on the last day of GDC and just sort of waltzed our way into this little pack of people huddled together like penguins because it was so flippin' cold in San Francisco at that point. And just chatting with them. Some of them were from Australia. Some of them were from the Netherlands, which was like super interesting. And we chatted for a while, and then I was like, "Oh, so what do you guys do?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, we're indie devs or on indie teams working for video games." And I was like, "Oh, what games?" And I was confident that I would not recognize what the games were, but then one of them was like, "Oh, well, I work on Unpacking," and Unpacking is one of the indie games I've heard a whole ton about during the entire conference. It's one that maybe we'll play for this podcast because it sounds like a really fascinating indie experience. So I was like, "Wow!" And then the people from the Netherlands. They're like, "Oh yeah, have you heard of Toem?" And my friends were with me. They said that I literally jumped when he said that. Because then I figured out he was the composer for Toem. And I was like, not only did I play through all of this game, I made a podcast about it, and I wrote a song that was based on your style.
Inspired by his music. That's so cool.
And they was like, "Oh yeah, I think you talked to me." I was like, "I think you talked to my brother, but yes." So yeah, that was Launchable Socks is his moniker, or Yost, and I think that Angus was the one who was the artist for Unpacking. But anyway, so that was kind of cool, especially after talking to a lot of students and people trying to make it in the industry, just casually walking into someone that I was like, "No, I know your work, yeah." So that was definitely a cool moment. So yeah, it was cool to recognize some of the indie games there. Just sort of a brief overview of what the actual expo was. There were some booths by larger companies kind of showcasing their tech and, featuring to game developers what they can do. There were some new technologies that people are kind of like testing the water to see if there's a market for it, like alternate reality type technology where you look at a table through glasses and see, your board games can be animated or 3D. And so, yeah, just different technology like that. There were booths for each of the IGF, the Independent Games Festival games, so you can just play any of them. And then one of the coolest sections to me was the alternate control GDC section, which there were a whole bunch of controllers or alternate control schemes that they were basically showcasing, not on the market, but just sort of to show what you can do.
Can you give an example of one or two of those?
Yeah, for sure. There was a game called Plinko Burger that you control by squeezing mustard and ketchup bottles.
That's amazing.
I know, yeah. There's an animatronic crow that can tell you what card you put in front of it face down, and you have to try to figure out what its riddle is implying about the card. One of my favorite ones, it wasn't the most unique, but I think it kind of fit the controller, and the game fit really well. It was just these three old dial phones, and then there's a screen that has like an old-timey stock spread where you see these stocks going up and down, but they're stocks like a stock in mom or a stock in love or stuff like that. And when you see a stock go down and you want to buy it, you quickly cross-reference and figure out what the number of the stock is. You dial the stock on the phone and you yell into the phone, "Buy!" And when you see that the stock goes up, appreciates in value, then you hit the same button and then you yell, "Sell!" And then the numbers get bigger, so you have to you're like, dang it, and you have to dial three numbers, and then there are like mini games where you have to yell on the phone "buy" more times than your neighbor. So it just really felt like we were, 1940s or 50s stockbrokers just being like, "Sell, dang it, sell!"
So how many players could play this at once?
There were three phones.
Oh, okay. So it's literally three people on the phone all yelling, "Buy, buy, buy, sell, sell, sell," like
buy,
maniacs.
Sell. Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
Extremely stressful because you're like, what? No one told me the stock in pizza was going down. No, my profit margin is terrible. The market closes in 5 seconds. I got to sell everything.
I wish experiences like those were more readily available and accessible. Like, I wish we could all play that from home.
I think that some of the alternate control games have like home versions you can try out, but yeah, the specific experience of punching a punching bag to play a game, or scooting a little skateboard on a platform to play a game, you had to be there for those things for sure.
So I guess to sum it all up, what did you learn about the game industry? And also, do you see yourself kind of venturing more into the game industry now that you've, networked more or at least gotten a feel for what it's like to hobnob with bigwigs, as you put it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I kind of came there from an interesting perspective as a bit of an outsider. Outsider isn't the right word.
You're a creator.
Right. But I'm not currently working in the industry, and I also didn't go there to be a games journalist. Mm-hmm. I kind of went there to scope things out and make connections and kind of just see what the industry is like. And my observation is blockchain is huge, apparently. I'm just joking. I mean, that is also true. But specifically about the people in the industry, both me and my friends noticed this. People were really approachable. And that was a really cool kind of surprise that a lot of people were really welcoming to, I don't know, newcomers. I talked to several people who are like, "Oh, is this your first GDC?" They're like, "That's awesome. I wish I would have gone to GDC earlier." They're like, "This is going to be a great thing for your career if you're interested in games, just from the friends and the connections you can make here." And other people were just so willing to give advice or connect past the convention. So I feel like in the news, especially we hear a lot about the dysfunctional parts of the game industry. And,
sure.
I actually really can't speak to the severity of all that because, like I said, I haven't really been inside it. But at least from my experiences there, it was just a really cool thing to see that most of the individuals were just very open, very kind, and excited to share their wisdom.
That's really encouraging to hear. Do you see yourself, I kind of asked this already, but do you see yourself going more into the industry?
Good question.
Do you want to go back to GDC, for example?
It's definitely a possibility. I think I would want to go back and kind of more specifically market myself. I kind of went there and I was like, I'm a narrative designer and puzzle designer and content creator and music composer and audio engineer. I think if I would have kind of chosen one of those as my main focus, it would have been a little easier for me to start conversations with certain people. I'm not saying that was just a terrible detriment that I, talked about each of those things with different people.
Sure.
But yeah, I didn't see myself making it a regular thing, but after going, kind of getting a feel for what the conference is and, where to go and who to talk to, it makes me kind of want to flex my networking muscles and go back and bring you, Jared.
I would love to go. It sounds like a lot of fun getting virgin margaritas.
Exactly. That's just the one flex I wanted to put out is one of the companies. They had a social. I'm confident I was not their target demographic, but they gave me an invite anyway. And boy, howdy, were those the best free tacos I've ever had. And, I had a free drink token, so I go up to the bartender and I'm like, what do you got in the way of virgin beverages? And kind of went, we're not hipster enough to have a true mocktail menu, but anyway, I got a mango virgin margarita. It's good stuff.
How'd you get invited? Like, did they just throw a bunch of flyers off the top balcony level of the expo center and you grabbed one?
No, like a lot of the booths, I mentioned I got tons and tons of swag. I actually did talk to the people for most of them. There were 2 or 3 of them where I just was like, thank you, and walked away. But most of them, I chatted with them, asked them, what they did, what they were looking for at GDC. But yeah, so I was talking to different people. There was just one place where I went up and I saw a little block man figurine and I was like, can I have that? They're like, yeah, you can have that. I was like, so what do you do? It was like, oh, well, we're Backtrace and we work in, we're a Sauce Labs company and we work in latency reports. And I'm nodding, be like, yes.
Oh, really? Oh,
of course.
Interesting.
And can I have that rubber duck too? They're like, yeah, sure. That is true. I'm not being facetious.
Can I have that rubber duck?
I'm not being facetious. That's how that conversation went. And then he was like, oh, also this. And he hands me a QR code to scan to get an invitation to their happy hour drinks and tacos the next day.
That's awesome.
So a rubber duck led me to a fun social experience.
So you're really good at finagling free stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if I would say I'm good at it. I think the term is I have a weakness for it. Because of all, like I said before, out of all of my friends, I was the one who had to really worry about suitcase space on the way home. How am I going to get home all of these new journals?
Thank you, by the way, for giving me a keychain pepper spray. Really appreciated that. That was a
You're
cool
welcome.
party
It's hand
favor.
sanitizer, but you're welcome.
Oh. Well, it could still be used that way, I think. Well, I am a little jealous. I do have a little bit of FOMO, but it's been really fun to kind of hear about the adventures you had out in San Fran. So thanks again for taking some time to record.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to make you feel better, my feet really hurt. And I think I saw a drug deal on the subway. That was interesting.
Oh, well, maybe we'll have a part 2 to this episode and you could share some of the other stories that we might have missed out this time. But next week, we do have a full episode with a very special guest that I think a lot of people, the very specialist, and I'm sure a lot of people will recognize them. So until then, I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
And we will level with you next week.